Finally, we're getting some rock solid information about how long Dune is and what it's rated, so let's get right to it. The running time will apparently be 2 hours and 35 minutes, which is for the book, and I think for what Denis wanted, relatively short. But I think more concerning is the rating, which is now apparently going to be PG-13. I kind of suspected they were going to have to give it a PG-13 because they want the widest audience possible, and to be fair, there's a lot of teenage readers of Dune, so them being able to see it, I think, is fine. I mean, I remember seeing Batman Returns relatively young, and that was very, very graphic. So you can still do a lot with PG-13, but I think, of course, Denis would have preferred 3 hours and it being R-rated. So this is clearly not what he would have wanted. This is kind of a compromise, but how good is it and how bad is it? And it's kind of weird looking at the punditry and opinions because a lot of people think, well, 2 hours and 35 minutes is already way too long. And I'm kind of shocked where people are ending up on this because, and I agree that putting it at 2 hours 35 minutes is going to limit the profitability somewhat. But again, remember, it's not just going to be theatrical, it is also HBO Max. And there's been huge success with the Snyder Cut. Having it be 2 hours and 35 minutes is not really going to be inconveniencing people who play it on TV and can pause it, go back to it, or see it multiple times. But in terms of the PG-13, yeah, it is a little concerning because I was hoping a much more direct translation, and Denis, for the most part, has promised basically we're getting most of the book. And some people are confused about, well, how much nudity and how much violence and how much sex was in the novel. I myself think it's quite a lot. But again, this is an issue of perspective, right? Is it graphic? Is it really detailed? I think it is, but again, I guess it's sort of the times. Like, if you were to read a lot of descriptions, even at their worst, it's kind of tame by nowadays, right? So I guess it's like, what's people cut off for propensity for bloodshed or for nudity or for erotic material? But we are getting some things. We're going to get people, apparently the women fighting with one another, as well as the Jamis fight with Paul. Again, in the books, they strip down. It's unclear he's going to be able to go all the way with that. If this rating is correct, we're going to get very little nudity, which is kind of weird if you know the rating system. Actually, historically, you could get nudity in PG films. People might be stunned by that, but watch your Jaws. You'll be shocked. You can see quite a little bit of nudity in that. It's unclear what the cutoff is or what they had to compromise or what they had to take out to get to the PG-13. Again, the novel is not wall-to-wall violence or sex. That would be misdescribing it, but I do think you could describe it as having a lot of adult material, and apparently they had to tame that to get to the PG-13, so that's a big sacrifice. In terms of the time, I myself am just a little bit angry in terms of the hypocrisy and double standard. I mean, something like Endgame, which I consider easily one of the worst films of all time, just insanely stupid and just very mediocre, and even as a Marvel film, just very, very disappointing. I mean, I agree it has some spectacular shots and some too, but I just think as a narrative or even as a serious film, it's just so ridiculously stupid and unrelentingly bad. But I'm going to not go full depth into my polemic against Endgame, but that thing was 3 hours, right? Kevin Feige had no problem trading off at least some money to get 3 hours because he was assured that a lot of people would see it, and he was correct. It's one of the most profitable films of all time. Dune is in a different situation. It doesn't have the brand name that the MCU does, good or bad. So I can see why the producers are a little nervous and wanted to sort of go halfway with this. And 2 hours and 35 minutes is a lot. It is a lot. And Blade Runner, good or bad, I'm more negative than positive, but I do recognize the positives. And I agree that you couldn't really tell the story in a short amount of time. And Blade Runner is also very long. Apparently it's a little bit longer. It was 2 hours and 45 minutes. So I understand in terms of the commercial necessity here. They want to get more showings of Dune, and this is sort of like the least worst solution. Let's do 2 hours and a half. Because again, remember, there's trailers usually with these films, so it is technically a running time of 3 hours already. So they are making a little bit of a sacrifice. And something like this was going to have to give, but now it is official. It is going to be basically 2 hours and a half. It is PG-13, so some stuff is being definitely cut out because from the test screenings, again, I know Kevin Smith does not have a lot of credibility, and I agree. He has been caught too many times lying. But he has assured us that it was actually, it's a healthy 3 hours. So they have made some compromises. Again, overall, it's not bad. I mean, if you want to wait for the Blu-ray and get those deleted scenes, that's great. And eventually these scenes will get shown, right, or leaked. I mean, it's just too big a project. so it's going to be hard for them to suppress everything. And I'm sure Denis will give us some details on things not shown. But again, and I get it, the book readers are not the general audience, but it is a little disappointing that they had to cut things out to get to this. But it is a rough time, and I'm working on an analysis of this with Black Widow, because Black Widow's box office, unfortunately, is tied to this. Now, most of it's positive news with Black Widow, so it does seem like there will be a big audience for Dune, and they need to make back their money. I understand that. It just felt like they could have gotten there without shaving this much off. Maybe they could have done, 2 hours, 42 minutes, 43 minutes. Maybe they could have gone for an R rating. I mean, look at Joker. Joker had an R rating and made $1 billion without the Chinese box office. And as far as we know, Dune is going to get into the Chinese markets. I don't know. I guess they just got really, really nervous. So, but we will have to wait and see. But there we are. But at least they've released a ton of new images and posters and new art. So, again, they are doing the right thing overall, but it's still a little disappointing from my part. Because, again, that's what I would like to tell people. Like, well, you're finally going to get the book experience, and you got to be honest now. Say, well, you're going to get most of it. But if you come in thinking, finally, we're going to get the Frank Herbert vision, you're going to have to be like, well, you're going to get most of it, but you're going to get a tame version, and it's perhaps a little shorter than we would have wanted, and that's where we stand. So, overall, good news. You can't hide that, this is a little disappointing at the end. All right, this has been Worlds of Dune on the rating and the running time of Dune 2021. Thank you for listening.